right, Mr. Oliff?
Yes, thank you.
You ready to carry on?
Yeah.
Good, thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Oliff.
Mr. Oliff, can I ask you please to go to your witness statement at page 5 at the top? And you're talking about how the normal communication is done between the control room and the incident ground. And you say at the top, given how busy the head table was and the volume of information being received, I used my own mobile phone. I contacted the command unit CU7, and I remained in almost constant contact with CU7 up until 6:40 a.m. And then you exhibit the log, or the phone bill, which refers to those calls. A number of questions about that. First of all, is this something you had ever come across before or done before, that is, speaking directly to a command unit by your brigade mobile?
No. Something that probably hasn't come out from this is that this was not a normal procedure. Normal procedure in dealing with fire survival guidance calls is that information is normally passed to, say, command vehicles via the airwave radio. On this occasion, because of the using the airwave radio is normally suitable and sufficient for a low number of fire survival guidance calls. But again, because of the unprecedented type of incident we was dealing with, the amount of information that was being passed to the control unit, to the control room, it was something that was basically adapted so that we could record the information and make sure that any fire survival guidance information was passed to the command unit and dealt with by the fire crews on the ground.
Did anybody advise you or tell you to use your brigade mobile rather than the airwave radio?
No. One, I didn't have access to an airwave radio to do that, and secondly, to use my brigade mobile phone was my decision.
Why didn't you have access to an airwave radio?
Because the airwave, I had my own personal one, which I left in my vehicle when I arrived at the incident, because part of my role as officer of the day is not normally to use or communicate with the fire ground or incident commander directly. It's to liaise with the officer of the watch and the control officer's staff and assist them in duties. It's not my role is not to directly communicate with the fire ground as officer of the day.
Whose idea was it then for you to use your brigade mobile?
That was my. At the time, I was briefed that I was to take over responsibility for fire survival guidance information by Deputy Assistant Commissioner Adrian Fenton. I was told to use the 2 whiteboards to record information, and then it was my decision to use my mobile phone to contact the command unit and pass the information that way. Because I was in the corner of the room, I could pass information and record information on the board at the same time. Also, there were instances where I was called over to control operators' desks that were carrying out fire survival guidance information. So I was still in contact with the fire ground, and then if I needed to liaise with a call operator, then I could do that as well.
Oh, I see. Did you do that? You actually went over to control room operators while they were...
There was a couple that I got called over to because they was asked there was some very difficult situations, and I was asked to give advice or try and make a decision with regards to what to tell the person who was on the end of the phone.
Right. Okay, I didn't realise that. So, how many occasions would you say that happened on?
At least twice. What I can remember, twice, 2 or 3 times. I can't.
Okay, we may come to an instance of a call a little bit later on, but you say twice, 2 or 3 times. Okay. And why those particular calls? What was particular about the calls which took you?
I think the call operators were on the phone to people inside the building, and I think I'm not sure whether they was with regards to the advice that they was given. They was asking me for what they should tell the actual people.
They were asking you, were they?
Yeah. Well, on one particular occasion, there was one bit where the call operator wasn't sure what to tell the people who were involved.
Right. Do you know who that call operator was?
I don't know the name off by heart now.
Was it male or female?
It was a female.
Right. Do you know the flat number or the floor of the caller?
Yes, I do. I think that was flat, without regarding to my statement, I think it was 183 on the 21st floor.
Right. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that one. In order to go to assist, though, was there nobody else who could have assisted in those control room operators in the control room?
There was, from my recollection, there were other officers in the control room, but I was the nearest one, and because I was dealing with the fire survival guidance information, then I was asked.
Were there any difficulties or disadvantages in using your brigade mobile as opposed to using, for example, your airwave radio or the dedicated telephone line on the head table?
So, as I've stated before, I don't actually have, part of my role as officer today would not be to be in radio communications with the fireground in any way, shape or form. So I wouldn't normally speak to the incident commander or the command unit staff. That is normally done by the control operator, radio operator from control. The benefits of me using my mobile phone was it enabled me to be mobile within the actual control centre, be able to record information up on the ball and not be tied to a landline at a desk.
Right.
And as I said before, there was occasions where I was called over to a control operator who was on the phone giving fire survival guidance information. It gave me mobility within the actual control centre.
It is one of the disadvantages of using your mobile that the calls you were making to the command unit were not recorded.
You could say that, yes. You could say that's a disadvantage, but at the time it was the most expedient way of transfer I found of transferring information that I was given to the command unit, with the fact that I was trying to get, I was given lots of information via small pieces of paper, and say moving about in the control room, because I was in the corner of the control room. If I needed to move about, I was still able to talk to the command unit instead of having to put a phone down, walk across the control room, and then come back and then start talking to the command unit again.
Can I ask you to look back at a document we looked at earlier this morning, which was the incident report, the IMP, tab 30 of the documents bundle. And can I just ask you to look at the first page of that, third entry down, next to development. And the first item is one of two, the sharing of fire survival guidance information between control and the fireground was carried out by operational officers who were supporting control staff within the Stratford control room. Clearly, as you've explained, Mr. Oliff, you were doing that, but there's a reference there to operational officers in the plural. Was there anybody else doing the job you were doing on that night once you'd taken over FSG?
No. At one point, Station Manager Paul McClennican came up when he arrived at the control centre. He came over, and we were still discussing what we was doing. But then he was, I believe, given another task to carry out, another job to carry out. So I remained and pretty much did the fire survival guidance thing on my own.
And in the next item down, 2 of 2, it says this: the communication link was by mobile to mobile phone, not the dedicated line within PN 790, policy 790. Therefore, the conversations were not recorded. And then the recommendation is reinforce FSG training, reminding staff of the need to use the dedicated line, which is secure and recorded. So my question is, when you were told to take over the fire survival guidance calls by TAC Fenton, was there a dedicated line which was secure and recorded which you could have used?
At that time, not that I was aware of. At the time, I was given a task and a job to do, and I got on and done it to the best of my ability. I made the decision to use my mobile phone because I thought it would be easier for recording information and allow me the freedom to move about and liaise with control operator staff within the control room.
Yeah. My question was, or let me ask it a different way. Did you know that there was
No.
a dedicated line which was secure and recorded, which you could have used?
No, I didn't.
So nobody pointed that out to you?
Not at the time, no.
Right. Right. Now, can I just ask you to go back to your exhibit number 7, your list of calls? Third page of the document. They appear, but just help me if this is right, to be outgoing calls from your mobile, all of them.
That's correct.
So does that mean you always called the command unit
Yes.
and they didn't call you?
No.
Okay. Did they know how to get hold of you if they wanted to? Did the person in the command unit have your number?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I can't answer that.
When you called the command unit, I mean, there is a number there. Most of it's been redacted. But what were you calling? You were using your mobile. What line were you using?
I believe that's the team leader's mobile phone. Team leader's mobile phone.
The team leader's mobile phone. Who gave you that number?
I'm not sure if it was the officer of the watch. It was someone who was at the head table.
And that number, do you know what rang in the command unit? Was it a mobile or was it a fixed line or reception in the command unit itself?
I was just given the phone. I wasn't sure whether it was a mobile phone or whether it was a fixed phone within the command unit.
And the first 2 digits of the number 079, does that help you remember whether it was a mobile you were ringing or whether it was
I would assume with an 079 that would have been a mobile.
Okay, but that's an assumption.
Yeah, it's an assumption. So again, I can't confirm it.
And did you find that you had frequent and easy access to that?
Yes.
To that number?
Yeah. If I rang it, they answered straight away.
Right. Okay. And did you always speak? Do you remember? Did you always speak to the same person throughout the night?
Yeah, it sounded like the same person. I can't confirm it was, but it definitely sounded like the same person who was answering the phone.
Right. Now, at the time you took control of the FSG calls, were you aware of how many had come in at that point?
No.
Did you ask?
No, I didn't know.
Is there any reason why you didn't ask?
Again, I can just refer back to how busy and how much information that was coming in.
Right.
And I say I was given a specific job to do, a task to do, and at that particular time it was more important to get the information that we were receiving in control to the command unit at the fire ground, so that the people at the fire ground could take action to try and rescue the people who were trapped.
Did you know what kind of advice the CROs were giving callers at the time you took over FSG?
At that particular time, I was aware that it was stay put policy. The stay put policy or information was given for people to stay in their premises, and advice was being given how to try and stay safe whilst they was in there.
And who, you say you were aware of that? How were you aware of that?
I can't remember whether I ever heard that they were still at a stay put policy, but I know further in my statement I had a conversation with the person who was on the command unit, and I gathered information from him, which I then passed to Adrian Fenton and Joe Smith. They were standing by the head desk, and I said, "This is the information that I've just received," and both of them were discussing about changing the stay put policy to evacuate.
Okay, we're going to come to that. We're just getting a little bit ahead, but just focusing on my question, which was when you first started taking over management of fire survival guidance calls in the...
National guidelines is that we...
Can I just ask my question? Sorry. Can I just ask my question, which is, when you first took over, how did you know that the advice being given by the control room operators was stay put?
I remember being told, but I can't remember who told me.
Okay. And do you know, or do you remember what conditions the callers were reporting when you first took over management?
When I first took over, there was a number of calls that were coming in saying that there was smoke coming into flats. People have tried to get out of their flats. The lobby areas were heavily smoke logged. There was another couple further on where we had reports of someone saying there was a fire directly outside their front door. There was a vast array of different conditions in different flats.
Right. Did you have a view at the time about whether the continuing to give the stay put advice, as you call it, was the right thing to do, or that it should be changed?
At the time when I was dealing with the fire survival guidance information, my main concern was getting that information to the command units, and because of the amount of information that I was being given, I didn't really have time to consider whether they should change the stay put advice until I actually spoke to the Command Unit 7 and gained further information, and that's when I approached Deputy Assistant Commissioner Adrian Fenton and Joe Smith at the head table.
Okay, let's pick that up then. If you go to your statement, and go to page 5, where we are at the moment, you say, and this is the middle of the page, I remember the television inside the control centre wasn't working. I'd noticed this when I first walked into the control, and I'd asked the officer of the watch why the television wasn't on and been informed that it was broken. I'm going to that now because there's a build-up to this stay put issue. But is that right? You remember that you were told it was broken?
Yes.
Right. This made it difficult for us to know and picture what was going on at the incident itself. And then you say, I recall asking the operator at CU7 where the bridgehead was located as I was trying to build a picture in my head of the situation. Now, just pausing there, do you remember when you asked that question? How long after starting?
I'd taken over as passing the fire survival guidance information, and I'd been doing it for a while.
Right.
For a while, I passed quite a lot of information over, and I was trying to build a mental picture in my mind about what was happening at the incident. Our operational policy is that we normally set up a bridgehead 2 floors below the fire.
Yes.
I remember asking the control operator, because of the amount of information, the fire survival guidance, I hadn't heard any informatives back from the incident with regards to how the fire had developed at that time because I was concentrating on the information. Asked him about where the bridgehead was located. I was informed that the bridgehead was located on the ground floor of the building, and it was on the ground floor of the building at that particular time. I was then informed by the control operator that they was having difficulty getting fire crews.
Hang on, I was getting ahead of ourselves a little bit.
Sorry, okay, yeah.
I'll come to that in a moment. We are going to come to it. Can I ask you this question? You asked the question of the operator on CU7 where the bridgehead was located. Why did you ask that question?
Again, I was trying to get a mental picture of what was happening at the incident. And I say, normally we, operationally, we set up a bridgehead 2 floors below the fire, yet we was having reports of fire on a lot of the upper floors. So I was trying to get a mental picture of how far the actual fire had spread within the building. Right.
And what would you what was the purpose of having that information?
To try and find out. Normally, we set up a bridgehead within the actual building itself, and to find out that the actual bridgehead had actually been moved to the ground floor outside, means that it just showed it just put a mental picture in my mind that this was a major incident.
And you say I was told, excuse me, I was told that the bridgehead was on the ground floor outside of the building.
Yeah.
This was unusual as the bridgehead is normally positioned 2 floors below the fire floor. When you were told that, what did you do with that information?
Well, this is where all the other information comes in with it, because it was one conversation with regards to where the bridgehead was, the information that the command operator gave me with regards to fire crews having difficulty getting to the upper floors, and the information that came back due to the possible dangerous nature of or stability of the building, that they had a gold meeting, the Commissioner was considering withdrawing the fire crews. So that was all one piece of information that I gathered.
Okay.
Once I'd received that information, I thought it was pertinent to go and then tell the Deputy Assistant Commissioner Adrian Fenton and Joe Smith, who was standing at the head table of in the control room.
Okay. Let's try and take this in stages then, in terms of the timing. In this paragraph, you've given us information you got from the fire ground. So bridgehead had moved to the ground floor, and then fire crews having difficulty getting above the 15th floor, and then information that a gold meeting had concluded, and the Commissioner was considering withdrawing the fire crews because of the dangerous condition of the tower block.
Yep.
Now, those 3 pieces of information, did they come in separate conversations or in one
That was all
conversation?
one conversation.
Right. Now, looking at your phone log, if we can just jump back to that, JA07 16910. Looking at the times of the calls, we've got one at 0206, 15 minutes 58 seconds, and then a short one at 2:23, 2 minutes and 40 seconds, one at 2:33, 8 minutes and 44 seconds, and then one at 2:44 that lasts for an hour and 35 minutes odd. Which of, if any, of those calls do you think you got
I would say
those pieces of information?
Between the 2:33 and the 2:44.
Okay.
I can't be 100% certain.
So you think it was during the 8 minute and 44 second conversation?
Oh, no, I didn't say that. I said it could have been the 2:44.
Okay, all right.
It could have been between the two.
We say between the two. Are there any other calls that are that you made?
Well, again, I mean, the 8 minutes,
list?
they're literally within the 8 minutes, you're literally within 4 minutes of the hour and 44. So
Okay.
it was between 2:33 and the phone conversation between 2:44. So it could have been either of those
I understand. And what is it that prompts that recollection about that time period?
Just the sheer amount of number of fire survival guidance calls and information we was receiving from the incident ground.
Right. Now, you then you say at the bottom of page 5 of your statement, an informal meeting took place involving DAC Fenton and another DAC whose name I cannot recall.
That would be Joe Smith.
That's Joe Smith.
Yeah, it was Joe. Yeah, it was Adrian Fenton and Joe Smith were standing at the head table, having a discussion, and I came over and gave them the information that I just gained on the phone.
Okay. And so this meeting was in the control room, was it?
Yeah, it was in the control room. It was an informal thing. I received that information, and as soon as I got that information, I approached Dak Fenton and Joe Smith so that I could relay that to them.
Okay. And do you know how long DAC Fenton had been in the control room for when you approached him?
I couldn't say. He was backwards and forwards. And I say a lot of my time was concentrating on receiving information from the call operators and passing it to the command unit.
Okay. And so this informal meeting took place after you'd received these two pieces of information?
They were standing at the head desk having a conversation, and as soon as I got that information, I thought that was quite an important piece of the information that I'd received. I just wanted to make sure that they was aware that had gone on the fire ground.
Right. You then go on to say, as a result of this latest information, DEC Fenton informed me that the FSG advice would have to be changed.
Whilst we were standing there, there was a small conversation between Adrian Fenton and Joe Smith, where they looked at each other and went, we need to change the advice that's being given on the fire survival guidance calls.
Right. I put the statement to you, and you've now said, whilst we were standing there, there was a small conversation between Adrian Fenton and Joe Smith. They looked at each other. Can you remember what they said to each other?
We need to change the information, the fire survival guidance information.
Right. Joe Smith's given evidence
to get everybody out.
Okay. Joe Smith's given evidence that the decision to change the advice and depart from the stay put advice was her decision, with which Mr. Fenton agreed. What can you comment on that?
That I would say that at that particular time, it was they was having a conversation at the head table. I approached them with this information, told them the information. I'm not sure what they was talking about before I approached them. I gave them the information, and there was a very short confirmation where it was like they both agreed that the fire survival guidance information should be changed from stay put policy to get everybody out.
Right. And just to try to pinpoint the timing of that decision, you very helpfully told us that it was either shortly after 2:33 or shortly after 2:44. Can I just ask you to go back to the control debrief note, which we've got in our master documents bundle at tab 51. Look at page 6, please. At the top of the page, it says, and just to remind you, I'm so sorry, just to remind you what this document is, Mr. Oliff, this is the 24th of July handwritten notes of Andy Hearn, who chaired it, a meeting to debrief from the control room. And it says at the top of page 6, DAC Fenton arrives, speaks to SM Oliff, arranges collection of FSG calls, whiteboards, paper, gets SM McClellan to assist, and then 02:35, stay put advice changed. Info from incident ground to Ort and CU via SM Oliff.
So it would probably been the 2:33 phone call that I got that information then.
Right, okay. Would you agree with it that that is correct, about
Yes.
2:35?
Yeah.
Okay. And then a little bit lower down, it says, Joe Smith aware of Lacanal, 1 hour, Joe Smith listening to Stratford control room and forming an opinion, DAC Fenton wants to check with Fireground, Joe Smith makes decision and tells A. Norman, advice, to wet towels over mouth, hold hands, stay together, get out, could be last chance. I've read you that in full. Do you remember any discussions between Joe Smith and Adrian Fenton or yourself about any of those matters?
No. I literally approached Adrian Fenton and Joe Smith, gave them the information. There was a very brief, we need to change the stay put policy to get out. I then went back to carry on with the fire survival guidance information passing. So if I've got any further information, I'll carry on passing it over to the command unit.
Do you remember any discussion, I think you've answered this, but let me ask it anyway. Do you remember any discussion whereby DAC Fenton says, I want to check with the Fireground before we change the advice?
No, I don't.
You don't?
No.
Okay. Now, immediately after that decision you heard be made, did either DAC Fenton or Joe Smith tell you what to do with that information?
With regards to the change of the stay put policy, no, because I was just dealing with still passing the information for fire survival guidance calls to the command unit. I was aware an announcement was made in the control room to change the stay put policy.
Okay, and so far as you know, how were control room operators informed of the change in advice?
I think it was just verbally to all. There was no phones or pages. I think it was just a case of making sure that all call operators knew that the policy had changed.
How was that done?
By word of mouth. Being told.
Being told, face to face.
Yeah, verbally.
Do you remember who went round the control room?
I don't know.
Telling the CROs?
No, I don't.
Do you know what they were told to say?
No.
Do you know whether CROs were able to give the callers any guidance as to how to assess whether it was safe to leave?
No.
Okay. And going on to the top of page 6, you say in the third line, the call operators had now been advised that the advice we were providing had now changed, and that they should encourage occupants of the flats to make their way out of the building if it was safe for them to do so.
That's correct, yeah.
Was that something you heard? Did you hear that the advice that the call operators should be giving is to encourage occupants to make their way out of the building if it was safe to do so?
Yes.
Who did you hear that from?
I'm sure that came from Joe Smith when they changed the stay put policy.
Did you hear Joe Smith telling the operators that?
I can't be 100% certain that I heard it, but I know that was the advice that was given.
Did you know whether she or any other CROs had any information as to what kind of conditions callers would be entering if they did leave their flats and try to make their way out?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Did you know whether Joe Smith or any of the control room operators had any information as to the kinds of conditions that callers would face if they took the advice to get out and use the escape routes?
With all the fire survival guidance calls that were coming in, they was aware that conditions in a lot of the lobbies and the stairwells were heavily smoke logged, or there were fire conditions in some of the lobbies.
Yes. You heard that, did you?
Well, the information that I was being passed, there was a lot of information which stated that callers were saying that they were smoking their flats, they were smoking in the areas outside their flats.
Mm-hmm. Now, you go on to say the stairwell of a building should be a protected area. This means it should be protected from smoke and heat for a certain duration in the event of a fire. So if people were able to get to the stairwell, it was hoped that they could exit the building. Now, do you remember having any conversations on the night at the time of the change of the stay put policy about the likelihood of people being able to get out, given the conditions in the lobbies and the stair?
No.
Did you remember having any thoughts about it?
At that time, when the information, when the policy was changed from stay put to get everyone out of the building, that decision was made knowing that, I interpreted that as that may be their only way out of the building if they make their own way out.
Right. At the moment when the decision to revoke stay put was taken, you say, I'm sorry to ask you to go back to page 5, you say that one of the pieces of information that you had from CU7, and this is two-thirds of the way down page 5, was that a gold meeting had concluded and that CU7 had been informed that the Commissioner was considering withdrawing all the fire crews. Is that what you heard from CU7, that Gold Command was considering it?
That's the information that I was passed from the operator from Charlie Uniform 7.
How did you understand that? Did you understand that that decision had been made to withdraw the crews, or merely it was just being considered?
It was passed that they was considering, right, because of the because of the possible dangerous structure of the building.
Okay. Now, Mr. Merrick, who was the watch manager, who says he was the one in contact with you all night by mobile, says, and I'm summarising his evidence, that he asked, that you asked him to confirm with the incident commander that stay put advice could be changed. Do you remember that?
That I asked,
yes,
if the stay put advice could be changed.
Yes. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that, no.
Okay. He also says that he confirmed it with Assistant Commissioner Rowe and then told you that the stay put advice had been changed.
I don't remember that.
Don't remember that?
No.
Okay. Was your understanding, well, let me put it this way, what understanding did you have about the need for the incident commander to be involved in the decision to change the stay put advice?
It's part of our policy that the incident commander can, in liaison with the officer of the watch or the officer in charge of control, can change the stay put policy, but it does state in our policy that that would be going against national guidelines. But again, that would be in exceptional circumstances.
Do you know whether DAC Fenton or Joe Smith was party to a conversation with the incident commander about stay put?
I don't know.
You don't know? You don't remember it? Or you don't know?
I wasn't privy to any of those types of conversation. If I got information that I felt was pertinent to some of the decision making that went on in the control room, then I would go and inform Adrian Fenton, and then I would go back to my duties of passing information regarding the fire survival guidance.
After the decision was made that you heard being made by Joe Smith and DAC Fenton, did you speak to the command unit about that decision?
No.
You didn't?
No.
Did you speak to anyone on the fire ground about that decision?
No.
Do you remember being told by Mr. Merrick or anybody else on the fire ground that the advice had already been changed at the scene?
I can't recall that conversation, no. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I don't have I can't recall it.
Right. Do you remember the involvement of somebody called Group Manager Stephen West?
With regards to?
Well, with regards to the fire at Grenfell Tower on the night.
No.
And he says, and I'm summarising his evidence, and it'll have to be explored with him because he hasn't yet come to give evidence, that he took a call from DAC Fenton, who was asking for permission from the Commissioner to change the stay put advice. Do you remember anything about that?
I was on the opposite. I wouldn't have been privy to that conversation, say, because I was, Adrian Fenton and Joe Smith were at the head table most of the time, and I was in the corner.
Were you aware at all that DAC Fenton had attempted to, or had in fact contacted the incident ground seeking authorisation or permission to change the stay put advice?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
All right. After the stay put advice had been changed, now, Watch Manager Merrick said that there wasn't a noticeable change in the advice coming through from control to callers. That was his perception of it. Is that what was your perception of it?
Say that again, sorry?
Yeah, I'm just going to put this to you. In his evidence, Watch Manager Merrick said that after the decision to change the stay put advice and tell everyone to get out had been made, he didn't notice any change in the advice being given by control room operators to callers. That was his perception of it. What was your perception of it?
My perception was that once the decision was made, the call operators were trying to get people to evacuate the building.
Now, I want to ask you about some of your evidence on pages 6 and 7 of your statement, which you mentioned earlier, which was the call from flat 183. Now, first of all, I think we can correct something in your statement. If you look at page 6, a quarter of the way down, just after the beginning of the second paragraph, you say, I was called over by a female operator, and I'm unsure of her name. This operator was speaking with a male who was inside his flat with his family. The flat was number 182, located on the 21st floor. Now, you earlier this afternoon, I think you said 183. Can you remember which flat number it was?
I'm not sure it was 182 or 183.
I think take this from me that it was 183.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't jar with your recollection.
Yeah, I think it's, yeah.
Okay. And was this conversation or this event being called over by the female operator, was that after the statement advice had been changed?
Yes.
Yes. Do you remember approximately what time this took place?
No, things were whizzing. Time was whizzing because there was so much going on.
Were you? When that happened, were you still on the mobile phone to the command unit?
I can't remember. I think this may have been one of the times. I can't remember if I was still on the phone or not.
Okay. Is this something you'd ever done before? Like go up to a CRO and give assistance as to what advice to give to a caller?
Yes.
You had?
No, this is the first time I've done it, yeah.
It was the first time you'd ever done it?
Well, it's the first time I was an officer of the day, so it's the first time that I'd actually been in the control centre as giving advice. I'd done the training part of it, but obviously...
Now, if you go to JA05, which is a photograph of your whiteboard, I think this is the first one you did, you can see about halfway down the page, 183, it's a little bit faint, got to either move the screen or duck down, but 183, 21st, 2 adults, brackets, preg, brackets, 3 children stuck in flat. So you wrote that on the board there. At what stage in the night do you think you wrote that on the board?
That was reasonably early on. That was when the stay put policy was still in force.
And then when you went to the control room operator's the female control room operator's desk to assist with the call, was that long after?
Yeah, that was a fair time after that.
Fair time after that. Okay. And is that whiteboard entry there, 183, 21st, 2 adults, preg, etc. Is that the call that you ultimately ended up assisting with?
No, that was one that came in before that.
Okay, but that's the same flat and same
flat,
people,
yeah.
Is it? Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, in your statement, you say, 6 lines down from the beginning of the paragraph, sorry, 5 lines down. When I approached the operator, turned to me and said, "Where are the firefighters?" Now, what did you do by way of a response, or say by way of a response?
The operator had, because we changed the stay put policy, the operator had told the people in the flat to evacuate. She's managed to talk them into the staircase. The call operator at the time said to me she expected that there would be firefighters within the staircase. And when she called me over, she said, "Where are the firefighters?" And then she said, "I've got them into the staircase, but I thought firefighters would be there." And I said, "Well, no, the firefighters are having difficulty getting above the, I think it was the 11th or 15th floor. They was having troubles because of the intensity of the fire and the conditions in there. They was having trouble getting above that floor."
Yes, and you go on to say, "The male on the phone had entered the stairwell as instructed, but there were no firefighters to assist them in leaving the building. The operator had anticipated that there would be firefighters to assist." Do you know whether, after you had been told by the incident ground that firefighters couldn't get above the 15th floor, whether that information was passed to the control room operators?
I can't confirm that, no, I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
Is there any reason why that information wouldn't have been passed to the control room?
I remember passing it. I say it was a conversation, that conversation I had with Adrian Fenton and Joe Smith at the head table, and I passed that information over to them. I don't know whether that would have been passed on to the to the call operators.
Right. Now, you'd go on to describe in summary the experience you had of the call. Can I just ask you how you heard what was going on the call? Where were you, first of all, where were you standing?
I was standing basically next to the call operator.
Okay, and did you have an earpiece into the call?
I didn't, no, I was listening to basically what she was telling me.
And could you hear what was being said from the other end by the caller?
No, she was just sort of like explaining it to me whilst I was standing there.
Right. So when you go on to say the male was informing the operator that the stairwell was smoke logged and he was having trouble breathing, is that something you heard from her?
Yes.
Okay. What did she do? Did she repeat that so you could hear it?
Yeah.
Right. And did you stay with the operator until the call ended?
Yes.
You did. And then you go on to say, "I consider the options." This is the last paragraph on page 6. "This was a highly stressful situation, and I did not have the luxury of deliberating over the choices." And then you say this: "Having seen the events unfolding at Grenfell Tower on the television, and having knowledge of the conditions in the stairwell, I thought it unlikely that the male would be able to make it back, find his wife, and still make it out of the building with all of his children." Now, first of all, when you say having seen the events unfolding at Grenfell Tower on the television, what television are you referring to?
So earlier on in my statement, there was a part where I mentioned that Station Manager McClennican arrived and came in and asked me if I had seen what was going on at the incident, and then he showed me a news article or news clip that was on his phone, he had on his mobile phone, which was obviously at a distance to show the whole tower block that was on fire.
I see. So that, to be fair to you, is at the bottom of page 5 of your statement. So just to be clear, that's the reference to that, is it?
Yes.
To pictures on on Steve McClenaghan's.
Paul McClenaghan's. Yeah, he came in and said, "Have you seen what's going on?" And I was like, "Well, no." And then he showed me a very brief clip of the actual incident,
right,
on a news clip on his mobile phone.
And did you think that what he showed you by way of a clip on his mobile was helpful to you in assessing the situation?
That was the time that I'd already taken over the fire survival guidance calls, but it allowed me to see what we was actually up against and the conditions that crews on the ground were dealing with.
Well, you say that was at the time you'd normally taken over the fire survival guidance calls. Can I just get this deep point of detail in timing? At what point did Paul McClenaghan show you the pictures of his on
I
his
can't remember exactly. I know I'd taken over the fire survival guidance. I'm sure the pretty much most of the half, or at least all of the first whiteboard that I was completing had been completed. And he came in because he was backwards and forwards because he was doing other tasks. So he came in and asked me if I'd seen what was actually, and I was like, well, no, because I can't. And then he showed me a clip of it, which I must admit, I was quite astonished.
Do you remember whether you saw the pictures on his phone before or after the stay put advice was changed?
That would have been possibly before.
That would have been
close. It would have been close around the time that it was.
Right, around that time.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you then, going back to page 6, you say, in the same sentence, having seen the events unfolding at Grenfell Tower on the television, which is his mobile phone, and having knowledge of conditions in the stairwell.
So
can I just ask my question? Where did you get your knowledge of the conditions in the stairwell from?
So you've missed part of the actual part of my statement, which is further up, where the actual male on the telephone was describing to the call operator the conditions within the staircase and that he was finding it difficult to breathe.
Okay. And before you heard the call, or before you heard what the control room operator was saying about what she was being told, did you have any other knowledge or any other source of knowledge about the conditions in the stairs or the lobbies?
Well, again, the fire survival guidance information that I was being passed described that there was heavy smoke logging on the landings and in the staircases.
Okay. Now, do you remember where or which? Do you remember the origin of the call about that family on the 21st floor?
Sorry, I don't get the question.
Yeah. When you wrote on the whiteboard, as we've seen a minute ago, flat 183, 21st floor, and then the details of the family, do you remember where that information originated?
Again, most of all of that information that was on the whiteboard, there was small pieces of paper that were handed to me with the flat number, what floor they was on, and how many people, and some of the bits of paper described the conditions within the flat or outside the flat, and others didn't.
Okay. Do you remember whether Essex Fire Service had any involvement in any calls?
Not Essex, Kent.
Not Essex, Kent. You don't remember?
I don't remember Essex. No, I don't. Not from Essex. I remember there was we received quite late on. Received information came to me that they'd had a call from Kent Fire Brigade saying that relatives had received a phone call from occupants within the tower, and then Kent Fire Brigade had then passed that over to the London Control.
Yes, and if you look at page 7 of your statement, 3/4 of the way down that page, you say, we received a call from Kent Fire Brigade at one point. And this happened because a family inside the tower had called a friend or family member who in turn contacted 999. Because they reside in Kent, the call got passed to us through Kent. When you took on responsibility for the FSG calls, having been instructed to do so by DAC Fenton, were you aware that there were other control rooms outside London taking 999 calls in respect of Grenfell Tower?
With the exception of Kent, no.
Right. Okay.
I do remember a number of control operators coming up to the whiteboards, looking at the whiteboards to see whether the information they had was up on the board. There was a couple of times where call operators they'd been given further fire survival guidance information. They checked the whiteboards and see that the information was already up there. Gave me the pieces of paper, and then they went back to their control desks.
Okay. And when the Kent call came in, how did it come in? Which line did it come in on?
I'm not sure which telephone line. I was informed by one of the control operators that they'd had a call regarding that information, but we'd already had that up on we already had the fire survival guidance information up on our board,
Right.
and had already notified the command unit of the incident.
So you don't know how, is this right? You don't know how that fire service, Kent Fire and Rescue Service, communicated with the control room?
No, I know they'd contacted London Control by phone.
Did you know that there's a designated line for all of the buddy control rooms to be able to contact the LFB control room on?
As I've said before, I'm not a control operator, so I'm not sure of their procedures or policies with regards to that. I know we do have some direct line to major risks within the London area that we do, like airports and stuff like that, but I wasn't aware with regards to other brigades.
Okay. So you were put in charge of FSG calls, but didn't know that there were buddy control rooms who were going to be handling FSG calls and passing them through.
No, I wasn't aware that other brigades would be dealing with other fire survival guidance calls now.
So when you got this call from Kent through the CRO, were you surprised that there were?
Not at all, no. I mean, the information I was given that relatives had phoned through to, because they was in the Kent area, it'd gone through, because they lived in Kent, they'd phoned 999, which had gone through to Kent Control, and then Kent Control had gone straight through to, had contacted London.
I see. So, I see. Did you have any information at all about other control rooms providing FSG assistance to Stratford because of the sheer volume of calls being received by Stratford?
No, I was the only thing I was aware of was the information that I was given by call operators. I wasn't aware where the information had come from.
Right.
So a lot of the times I assumed that the information I was being given had come from residents within the tower block.
So nobody during the night giving you information said to you there are 2 or 3 other, in fact 5 other services taking calls in respect to Grenfell Tower?
No.
Right.
I think the main part of the fact was that we was getting the important information regarding the people trapped within in the tower block to the fire ground, and I think stuff like the information where the call had come from or originated from wasn't high on the priority list of passing through. It was more about knowing where people were trapped and where we needed to send the fire crews.
Can I just ask you to, maybe you can't help with this, but can I just ask you to look at a document which is LFB 00003625. And it's a question I suppose I should have asked you earlier on in your evidence, but since we're talking about non-London fire services, it comes up now. This document is a log, an incident log kept by Essex Fire and Rescue Services, and it's in reverse chronological order, so it starts at 2045 on the 14th of June, but as we scroll down to page 3, if we could, there's a time mark of 2:14. And at 2:14 there, just gone past it. At 2:14, I can just ask Mr. Documents Director to highlight the text there. It says, on the Grenfell Tower regeneration, there is a emergency fire arrangement paragraph. Their policy states to stay put unless otherwise advised. Grenfell was designed to rigorous fire safety standards. Each front door for each flat can withstand a fire for up to 30 minutes. Now, we may need to explore how Essex came by that information and what it is, but can you help? Do you, from your experience of the night, do you know what that means? Let me ask
I have no clue where they got that information from.
No.
This is something that I would not have seen.
Do you know what, when you arrived and started taking over FSG calls, were you aware that there was an emergency fire arrangement paragraph, whatever that is?
No.
And were you told or did you discover that Grenfell was designed to rigorous safety standards?
To be fair, most high-rise tower blocks should have most flats in high-rise buildings should have an hour's fire resistancy to be able to contain the fire.
Can you explain why Essex would have that information to be able to put it onto their log?
I can't, no.
Okay. Also on the subject of non-LFB call handling, were you aware when you took on responsibility for fire survival guidance that Alexandra Norman in the control room had asked BT operators to take FSG calls?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
Did you ever become aware during the night of that fact?
I say my primary role at the control centre was to take information from the call operators and then just pass it to the command unit.
Yes, and now we've seen you doing that with the whiteboard and the mobile phone and the logs. From the logs, it looks as if you were on your mobile for, on one instance, an hour and a half, from 2:44 till about 4:15.
Yeah.
During that long call, do you remember ever getting any information back from the incident? Well, let me just finish the question. From the incident ground, about what BA deployments were happening and how successful rescues were?
No, I didn't. There were a couple on the whiteboard where I got information back saying that they'd been rescued. There was only a couple that I recall, but no, I didn't get any information regarding how BA resources have been deployed.
Given the policy that we looked at together this morning, specifically policy 790 paragraphs 9.1 and 9.3, which are about information coming back to the control room from the incident ground, did you press the command unit for any detailed information about how specific FSG calls were going, or how specific rescues were going?
No, I didn't, no.
Is there a reason why you didn't?
It's just a simple fact that, and again, I will mention this was not a usual incident. This was an unprecedented incident that no one in London has seen. It just was out of the norm. So our normal fire survival guidance procedures are that it's all done over the airwave radio. So for it to be taken away and given to myself and two whiteboards and passed the information by mobile phone was something that I've never seen or heard of being done before. The amount of information that was being passed over to the command units, I would imagine that the fire crews on the ground was extremely stretched, and any information that they did get back, any information they did have with regards to people being rescued, that they would send back when they had the time to do so.
Did you not think, though, that it was critical in order for the CRAs to be able to give the best advice they could to the callers when they were handling the FSG calls, to press the incident ground for detailed information as to deployments to that flat or that floor? So
if you want to have a look at my call records again,
yeah.
If you want to get my call records up.
Sure. That's JA07, third page.
I just want to confirm for the record that the times that I was on that phone, phoning the command unit, I was passing information over to the command unit regarding fire survival guidance information. That was a constant stream of information that night. I didn't really have time to sit down and start questioning what is being done with regards to this fire survival guidance call, what's going on with this fire survival guidance call. The amount of information that was being passed over at that time, I didn't really have time to start questioning the command unit staff with regards to what's being done with regard to this flat and this particular flat. That, when you have a look at the actual times that I was on there and how long over that period from 2:05 to nearly 6:40 in the morning, that was dealing with fire information that I was giving to the command unit.
Right. So can we summarise your evidence
Yeah.
really in this way, that your role really at this incident was to gather FSG information, collate it, record it on the whiteboards and pass it by brigade mobile to the command unit?
Yes.
And that's it?
That was it, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, maybe a convenient moment for a break. There are one or two...
I was about to suggest that,
I
so
can
that's
see.
very fortunate.
I could tell you were. There are one or two further questions I think I have to follow up with, and there may be some others,
Yes.
some other stray questions too. So it would now be a convenient break.
I think it would. Is 10 minutes going to be long enough for this purpose?
If we make it 15, I think that would enable us comfortably to finish Mr. Oliff's evidence this afternoon.
Yeah, all right. Well, I'm going to say 25 past, which is over 10 and less than 15 minutes. Mr. Oliff, we're going to have a break. We'll resume at 25 past 3. And please don't talk to anyone about your evidence during the break. All right? Thank you very much. Right, 25 past 3, please. Okay. All right, Mr. Oliff. I think just a few more questions.
Yes, Mr. Oliff. Can I ask you please to look at page 6 of your statement? And I would just want to take you back to the discussion that you were having with the control room operator who was talking to the gentleman from flat 183. Just one or two questions about this. In the middle of the page, you say, I explained to the operator that firefighters were having difficulty in getting past the 11th floor. I told the operator that the family needed to keep going and try to reach safety. Now, I just want to ask you about difficulty getting past the 11th floor. First of all, do you know what the difficulty was in firefighters getting past the 11th floor?
So, referring back to what we discussed earlier, when I received information from the command unit that I was given the information that firefighters were finding it difficult to get past the 11th, I'm sure it was the 11th floor, due to fire conditions, heat and smoke.
Do you know where you got that information from?
That came from the person I was speaking to in the command unit. He informed me that it was all part of the same conversation with regards to the bridgehead firefighters having difficulty getting past the 11th floor and the commissioner considering evacuating fire crews because of the dangerous structure.
So would it be right then that during those calls, or perhaps during that very long call you had with the officer in the command unit, you did get some information about what was happening on the fire ground?
Yeah, I did say that. I mean, there were instances where I had small pieces of information come back. If you put the whiteboards up, there's a couple on there where I'd made remarks next to flat numbers where it said that it had been rescued.
Right. Just so I'm clear, the difficulty in getting past the 11th floor,
yes,
that's later than the different from getting past the 15th floor.
Yeah, it was 11th and 15th floor. There was on the first part of it, I can't quite remember. I remember him saying, I thought it was 11th, or it may have been 11th and 15th.
Well, I was going to ask you, because when you explained at the bottom of, or halfway down page 5, you said that you were told by CU7 that fire crews were having difficulty ascending above the 15th floor, and that was one of the things that led to the stay-put policy being changed. We looked at the time for that. This looks like it's later, and I'm asking.
No, it was the same. There was. I think in my mind, I wasn't sure whether it was the 11th or the 15th.
I see. Okay.
But the information came from the command unit stating that fire crews were having difficulty getting to the upper floors from 11th or 15th up.
So is the effect of what you're saying that when you were standing next to the control room operator, giving the advice, that you were remembering what the command unit had told you about difficulty accessing the building earlier on?
Yes.
I see. So it could be the 15th floor.
Could have been, yeah.
Now you say the difficulties were well, just focusing on the difficulties. Was that originally, if you look at the statement on page 5, you say that fire crews were having difficulty ascending. Let me just get this up. Ascending above the 15th floor due to the intensity of the fire.
Yep. Yeah, it was the same conversation.
It's the same conversation. So what would that mean in terms of being able to go up the stairwell?
Well, that would mean that the stairwell was probably heavily smoke logged. Right.
No fire in the stairwell.
Again, I was only repeating back what I'd been told by the command crew.
Right. If firefighters by this stage were wearing EDBA, what would the difficulties be in ascending up the stairwell?
I can't confirm whether fire crews at that point were wearing EDBA.
Right.
I didn't have any knowledge of the actual operations that were taking place at the time.
Okay. Now, can I then ask you to look at your whiteboards again? This is JA04 and JA05, and let's have them both up there at the same time. So it's Met 000169112 and 16906. First of all, we can see what's on the whiteboard. Did you record anywhere repeat calls?
No.
So we can see, so not on the whiteboard, but not anywhere else either.
If there was a repeat call, if there was a repeat call, then and then we already had the fire information up on that board, then I would confirm with the command unit that we receive further calls to that address. I wouldn't then double it up because I already had it recorded that we was already aware of that fire survival guidance information.
Okay. I see. So is there anywhere then a written record of a repeat information back to the CU?
No.
Right. What was there a system in place for dealing with repeat calls from a particular flat or particular caller?
No. I mean, if I got any information here, any additional information, or there was a change in circumstances, if I already had it recorded up on that board, then I would change some of the information that was there and pass that over to the command unit as well.
Yeah. But okay. And was there a system for calling callers back if information about them changed, or as when the stay put advice changed?
Because I wasn't actually dealing with the direct telephone calls with the occupants, I can't answer that.
Right. But you, from your own knowledge, you don't know, is that?
I don't know whether they was called back.
Okay. Going back just to look at the whiteboard, JA04, so the one on the left, just to the right of the redaction mark, there's some faint handwriting that looks like it says SM Yates, AC Mills, and then something on SM
that
something.
was already on the whiteboard and wouldn't come off before I started the actual recording.
Right, so that's historic.
Yeah, that was something that was on there and it wouldn't come off. I think someone had done it in permanent marker and it had stayed on there.
Right. Okay. Now, can I show you some documents that are exhibited to Mr. Fenton's statement? These are at MET 000017094. And it's a run of documents. I just want to see if you recognise these at all. I'm not going to take you through every single one, but just in terms of the type of documents. He says these are pieces of paper that he took from the control room, and I just wonder if you can help with them. And I'll take a couple at random. First of all, can you be shown 17094, page 3? It's a little bit faint. I wonder if it could be made clearer. But just looking at that piece of paper, is that something you recognise in terms of its type?
No. The information that I was given was on small, basically bits that had been torn off of A4 pieces of paper.
Okay, bits that have been, so scraps?
Yeah, scraps of paper, yeah.
Okay. Just looking at that page, we've got a reference to flat 152, 18th floor, 4 persons, 3 children from police, I think it says. And looking at JA04, the first whiteboard page, it says 152, 18th, 4 adults, 3 children, left flat. Now, can you help us make a connection between what is written on the whiteboard there, 152, 18th, and what's written on this piece of paper?
So the information, can you show me the whiteboard, please?
Yes, sorry, we can go back to yes.
So 152.
I'm looking at the very bottom. The first question I suppose I should ask is 152, 18th is written in black.
So that would have been the information that would have been passed to me, that there was originally 4 adults and 3 children in the flat, but they've now left the flat.
Right.
That information may have changed they may have been trapped in that flat, but then I may have been updated to say that they've now left the flat. Once that could have happened after the stay put policy was changed.
Okay. Now, let's just look at another one. Can you please go to page 17? So this is MET 777 page 17. I'm so sorry, 16. I'm so sorry. Wrong page. Page 16. Page before. Now, if that can be expanded, if you look at the lower part of that piece of paper, it says 23rd floor, flat 201, believed to be something, and then the word unconscious appears.
Yep.
Do you see that?
Yeah.
And then if you look at the left-hand whiteboard, JAO4, third entry down, just note the spelling. Okay, we've gone a bit fast. That's okay. Look at 201, 23rd floor, so third entry down. 2.ye old, 11 people now unconscious. Do you remember how the information on the piece of paper got onto the whiteboard?
Say again, sorry?
Do you remember how the information we see on the piece of paper?
I was passed a piece of paper
Right.
with that information on.
Okay.
And so, but all the pieces of paper I was given was like corners that were torn
Yeah.
off of A4 pieces. So it may have been written down again and then passed to me.
Mr. Documents Manager, I wonder whether we can have that FSG board up at the same time as page 16 of MET 000177094, just to make a comparison, to see whether the information on the whiteboard is derived from this piece of paper. And if you compare the wording, the word unconscious is misspelt in both places, and in fact the handwriting looks quite similar, but that's not for me to say. Can you explain how the information, including the information about unconscious and the spelling mistake, goes from the piece of paper onto the whiteboard?
That may have came on the piece of paper that I was given,
Right.
and that's how I wrote it out, writing it from the piece of paper.
So can we conclude from that at least page 16, the piece of paper, was something that was handed to you while you were at the whiteboard?
That piece of paper wasn't, because I say all the pieces of paper that I was given were small pieces of paper.
Right.
That were like corners torn off of.
I see. So the piece of paper at page 16 you say wasn't a piece of paper that you were handed?
Not if that's a full A4 piece of paper. I wasn't given any full A4 pieces of paper. Mine were just corners that were torn off of other A4 pieces of paper.
Okay. Right. Can you explain how the same spelling mistake came to be made on both the piece of paper and on the whiteboard?
That would have been where I just basically copied it off the snippet of paper that I was given.
Okay, so do you think that the piece of paper we've got on the right-hand side of the screen is a photocopy of something you were handed and then recorded onto the whiteboard?
That looks like a full piece of A4 paper.
It does, hence my
It's given to
question.
me, but I didn't receive any A4 pieces of paper. I just received little corners that were torn off.
Right. Finally, can I ask you to look at JA06, which is MET 000016909. Sorry. This is a list of flats, floors, adults and children. Do you know what this document is?
Yes, that's after 6:40, when there was no further fire survival guidance information. I was approached by Adrian Fenton and asked to just formulate a document just to say what flats and floor numbers and people, the amount of people, estimating the amount of people that we'd dealt with through the fire survival guidance calls. He just asked me to collate some information from the whiteboards to say what fire survival guidance phone calls we'd dealt with, what flats they was in, what floor, how many people we estimated, or was on the information that we was given.
Okay. And can you help with some of the manuscript on it? Against flat 70 floor on floor 10, adults 2, and there's some writing next to the 2. Do you know what that says? Perhaps we can have it enlarged.
Making way out.
Making.
It looks like it's making way out.
Something way out.
But I think that's when I first started doing it, and I was going to start putting what was up on the whiteboards, but I sort of like realised it wasn't after that. It was just after how many fire survival guidance calls we'd see, what flat they was from, what floor they was on, how many adults were involved, and how many children were involved.
And opposite number 83, floor 11, adults 1, there's a piece of handwriting. Can you decipher that?
Yeah, let's see. No, I couldn't tell you. Without actually seeing the document, I couldn't tell you.
But in general terms, I think would this be right, that the information that you collated on this piece of paper in this list was derived from the whiteboard?
The 2 whiteboards, yeah.
The two whiteboards. Can I just then go back finally to what I was showing you before, Mr. Fenton's exhibit, GAC Fenton's exhibit. So I just want to ask you to look at MET 17094, pages 23 and 24. First of all, do you know what this is? Have you seen this piece of paper before?
I haven't, no.
Might you be able to assist with what the ticks mean against each number?
No, I don't know.
Was there any system that you had in the control room for being able to tick off flats that had been cleared, or instances where deployments of BA wearers to FSG callers had been successful?
The only way that I've done it is if I received information back from the command unit. And if you have a look at the whiteboards, there's a couple where I've either circled them with an arrow saying rescued, or they've left the flat.
Right. Do you know, or did you know at the time of the system of recording FSG calls on the command unit?
Do I know of the system?
Yes.
You're talking about like the headline, but like the whiteboard, or you're talking about
Yes.
the command,
Well, let me show you
information?
I don't want to show you a document if you can't help me with it, but my general question is, did you know on the night of what system was being used on the command unit to record the information you were giving them?
So, as I say, our normal policy is that any fire survival guidance information initially goes on the control of information form. But actually what system they was using on the command unit, I don't know.
You don't know, okay. And if flats were cleared, or the BA deployments were successful...
Sorry?
If flats were cleared, or BA deployments were successful, were you told about it?
I only received very minimal information back on 1 or 2 flats to notify me the outcome.
Right. Can I ask you to look at page 9 of your statement? In the last sentence, you say, I was present in the control room when this was discussed. That's the changing of the advice. But I'm not certain if this would be detailed in a written decision log within the control room. Normally, any key decisions are recorded in a decision log held on the ground, not in the control room. Do you know whether there was a written decision log retained or kept in the Stratford control room on the night of the fire?
No, I wasn't aware of that. I know that if a key decision is made on the fire ground, then that's recorded on the command support system on the command units. But as for control, I wasn't aware whether they have a system in place to record key decisions.
Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I've got no further questions for Mr. Oliff. Mr. Oliff, thank you. I've no further questions for you. And I just want to say thank you very much for coming here today and assisting the inquiry with its investigations. Thank you very much.
Cheers, thank you.
I'd like to add my thanks, Mr. Oliff. It probably hasn't been terribly agreeable coming to give evidence, but we're very grateful for your doing so because it provides us with a lot of valuable material in pursuit of our investigation. So thank you very much indeed.
Cheers, thank you.
Now you're free to go.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we have reached the end of the oral evidence for today.
Yes.
Mr. Fenton, DAC Fenton, is coming tomorrow to give evidence. Between now and then, I'm urged by Mr. Kinnear that there is some material that needs to be read into the record.
Yes.
And he knows more about it than I do. So I think he will now take over that exercise.
All right.
So it's now proposed to read into the record the evidence of two witnesses, the first of whom is Alex de St. Aubin, and second of whom is Mr. Danny Bills. And so, with your permission, first of all, may I formally read into the record the statement of Mr. de St. Aubin. The reference is MET 000-12464, together with his contemporaneous note MET 00005530. The reference for Mr. Daniel Bills' evidence is MET *0005490.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right, well, that was quick. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that concludes the work of the inquiry for today.
Good, thank you very much. So we'll resume tomorrow at 10 o'clock with
10 o'clock.
another witness.
We do.
Good.
Thank you.
Well, as you hear, that's all we've got to do today. We will break now and resume at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you very much.